Yeah. And most of the places, the early places we were in didn't have it. There was a house that my dad built and spent the final years up there. He had the toilet and shower and all. A lot of places just had the outhouse. We usually washed up the bacon. Anyway, when I was living in that first house, I remember seeing this Model T coming in on the flat car, flat car, tied down. And it was all rusted to pieces at the time. The body was, fenders were half gone. A fellow by the name of Andy Darker had bought it, had it shipped in. And in later years, when they had the lookout, my dad had to, they put the roads, started putting the roads in. He bought it for $5, and he got it home, and can't remember who he bought it from, but he was really upset because he paid $5 for it because it had a tank of gas. And he took the gas tank lid off and they found out it was empty. He paid twice as much as he planned for the car. And gasoline had to be shipped in 55-gallon drums. That's why he had to pay so much for gasoline in those years. And everybody had guns, and my dad used to hunt his deer with a .22 because the ammunition was cheaper. That's how frugal you had to be in those years. And some of them wanted the World War I .6 30 caliber. They shoot clear through the deer and come out the other side. Let's see.
So your dad actually was able to shoot down the deer with a .22 and...
Yeah. He says he get close enough to move this on to leave him 22. He's 22 for now, so. Well, he carried a .44 pistol in his back pocket. And, I remember one year when we woke up and found out that it snowed so deep we couldn't see the fences. And one of the school teachers the snow crusted to get us to school. I had skis, and they broke trails, and we used the skis otherwise. You didn't break through the crust while you loosened. You could go where they wanted you to go. The hill would. So we used skis to get to school, even though it was next door. I had to ski right over the fences.
You guys use snowshoes too, or?
Yes, but I was too small to use snowshoes because they're too wide. You had to walk decently. I used skis for everything because my legs weren't. I wasn't big enough to use snowshoes because you got to keep your feet
apart.
I will tell you about the time the CC boys came in. And there was a railroad siding right in front of our place. And this train came, and we all knew they were coming, and everybody was looking for them. Mind you, there's no roads in and out of there yet at all. No cars. Except for that one car, that Model T, that Scramble. And that was it. Anyway.
Scramble?
Yeah, that's the nickname.
Nickname for it, right?
Yeah. It was a pretty well-known car. It was in the newspapers and things like that. It's Rambo. But anyway, they pulled in, and this was a trainload of youth from about 18 to 20 years of age from New York City. And they parked that train right there in that narrow valley, and it was all forested and everything like that. And they got out there with the bugle, and it was a quasi-military CC outfit. The President Roosevelt was starting in the 30s to keep the kids off the street, some of the kids off the street. They're going to do work projects, you know.
Uh-huh.
And that guy stood out there with that bugle, and he got about 2 or 3 guys out there that fell in. For the rest of them, when they opened those train doors, they just like wild animals. They ran up on those hills, and you know, they didn't get them, some of them back for a couple days. They got out there and they got lost. Stole every loose bicycle there was in town and rode around and did everything they wanted to.
And why did they stop over in Lester? Were they going to do some work?
They put in 85 miles of roads.
Oh, okay.
Bulldozer pass, you might call it.
Right.
And they brought in a train load of equipment, bulldozers and old Fords and tractors, some trucks and that. They had quite a time with those youth because they're probably a little bit on the delinquent side anyway, but they had a lot of trouble with them. There was accidents in the truck, hurt some of them, and I think deaths also. I know one of them fell on the railroad tracks and his legs fell off in the train, which I can't remember whether he died or not.
About how old were you when those boys came through?
4th grader, still in 4th grade. Yeah. I don't think I was 10. We'll say again that I was 9. And the reason I can place that is I had the bicycle. I think I had the bicycle at that time. And one thing that I will tell you about my early years is this is kind of interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the years that Hoover was in, some of the years that Hoover was in as the President of the United States, and when President Roosevelt was elected. But one of the issues, mind you, in my generation, just about all of them were in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much the way that it was for World War I. And my dad, my uncle, and all the people in town that were in that age group were veterans of World War I.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know where the origin of the belief that they were supposed to be paid a bonus, whether they were promised it politically or what, but they wanted the bonus for their service time during World War I. And it became a real political issue. And I can remember my mother taking me out one day and pointing to me all the people, these men that were riding the freight cars. They were just all loaded men all over it. She
Mm-hmm.
says they're all going to Washington, D.C. to protest that they haven't got their bonus.
Mm-hmm.
Amounted to, say, near $2,000, which is a lot of money in those days.
Right.
Well, they went to Washington, D.C., and this is, I remember this, so in the newspapers. They got to Washington, D.C. in the parks and that, protesting the government not paying what they figured was due them. And you heard of General MacArthur?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, General MacArthur, I don't know what rank he had at that time, but Hoover gave him the responsibility of running those men out of town. And they used tear gas and that and did run them out of town. And it was quite a political cry. And it was one thing that probably cost Hoover the election of Roosevelt the next time around. Roosevelt was president, Hoover wasn't. There was a lot of bitterness at that time against Hoover because we were in the Depression. And
Right.
he probably wouldn't have got elected with the Depression going on anyway, so I don't think that was a key issue. But in later years, after Roosevelt was in, they did pay the bonus.
They did.
Yes. I remember my dad getting about $2,000 in his bonus. And was allowed us to get out of that town. We moved here to Auburn because he had that money.
You need that money.
Yeah.
Well, how old were you when you moved here to Auburn?
I was just starting the 6th grade.
Okay. About 12. Thereabouts.
Well, if I was starting the 6th grade, I was still 11.
11, almost 12.
Yeah, I started school when I was 5. It was September, October, November, 3 months. I was almost at the end of November, 23rd of November.
Right.
But my dad always told me, because I can't remember them now, I'm having a hard time, that I've had so many experiences that I should keep a diary, because I could publish it with all the experiences that I had. Nothing dramatic, but most things weren't dramatic, but they were interesting.
Yeah.
Which is contrast to what most people. I'll tell you one thing, that when we moved out of the Pacific, one thing that I did that was, I've told you this before, I'm sure. They had the tire bicycles they had then. There were tires were cored all the way around with air in them, and to put them on the wheel, there were small diameter tires, like small, diameter tires, like they have now, and you had to glue them on the rim.
Huh.
And we had that house out of the city, and nobody was home, so I took the bicycle wheel upstairs, put the hoop on the wheel and the hoop on the tire like I was supposed to, and then had an awful time getting the tire on. When I got the tire on, I had this tube of glue, which is all gnarled and full of holes, and I'd squeezed the glue out of it, and I had glue all over my hands. And I went downstairs and threw the glue container into the stove, the kitchen stove, that we had a fire going in it, and caught my hand on fire.
Caught the glue on your hand on
The
fire.
glue on my hand on fire.
Right.
And I tried patting it out with my other hand, and I had both of them on fire. And so I had to get it out. It wasn't hurting me because I had enough glue. So I put my hand like that several times trying to put the fire out. And I slung that spots of glue on the wall, on the ceiling, and on the floor. And finally it dawned on me, I run over to the kitchen sink and turned the water on and put the fire out. Then went back with my hands and tried patting the fire out on the walls, and got my hands on fire again, and I ran back to the kitchen sink and put them out again. And I succeeded in having a lot of heavy water, and I got it out. And for some reason, the one in the ceiling went out by itself, and I put out the ones on the fire. So I looked at that kitchen, and it had wallpaper on it. And it had a spot on the ceiling, and I think there was 3 on the walls. The floor didn't damage the floor. It was a wood floor. There was no spot there. So I went out and got my stools and took mopboards off instead of mopboards an inch wide, while they were 12 inches wide. So I had lots of material to play with. Then I went and took some flour and water and mixed it up and put it on the stove and cooked it till it made a good paste. And I took my dad's razor blade and cut out a pattern to patch those spots on the walls and on the ceiling. Nobody ever knew. I never told anybody. I'd tell my grandkids.
They couldn't tell, huh?
They couldn't tell. But that was really frustrating, having your hands on fire and trying to put them out. And you couldn't.
Now, where was, you went to school here in Auburn High School, I remember.
I went to Washington Grade School.
Where it sits now, or?
Where it sits now, all the buildings are new now.
Right, but same land, right there was where the elementary school used to sit.
Yes. It was a 3-story brick building.